Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine on ESPN Radio 1230. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, John, we're back, and we are all set and ready. It's football season. We actually got to see a little football on Friday night, and that was fantastic. You got to see Barren County put up their best offensive performance since 2013. I think they beat Logan County 53-13. The last time they put up 48 points in an opening game was against Metcalfe County in 2011, I think. I think the Trojans went 6-5 that year, which may be the last year they had a winning record. I'm not 100% certain on that. I don't know if they had a winning record in 2013. I was thinking they went like 5-6 in 2013.
I think so.
Yeah. So the last two times they've been a team that has 500 record, I guess, at the end of the year, or however that worked out. They had a good offense, and they were able to score points, and that looks like the case this year, at least right out of the gate.
Well, they certainly played well against Metcalfe.
Yeah.
And they did a lot of things well. Now, I kind of thought this was going to be a tough matchup for Metcalfe. In fairness to Metcalfe, Metcalfe has when Coach Harbison was in here, he said, he was concerned with his offensive defensive lines were very, very young. And Metcalfe, I think, starts 10 sophomores. They only start one senior. And the big advantage that Barren had that it looked like early was our offensive line are all 5 seniors. And they're all returning. And I thought our offensive line played very, very well. Mm-hmm. And it looked like we had an advantage there. And as the game went on, too, it looked like the advantage was that we had more speed than Metcalfe. I think we took advantage of the fact as the game wore on. I think Metcalfe wore down a little bit. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be discouraged if I was Metcalfe because I thought they did some good things. And I like their quarterback. I like the Dial kid. I think he's a good sophomore. I like the running back. Yeah. I think
Summerly.
Yes, and once some of their line gets experience, I think they'll be fine with their schedule. Yeah. But overall, for Barren, you couldn't ask. For a program that has obviously struggled for years, you couldn't ask for a better performance because they scored in so many different ways than we scored in the past. We had a good drive or two, but then we scored off just monster big plays. 80-something yard run, a 53-yard touchdown pass, another 70-yard run, and those are things that Barren in the past has just not been able to do. Yeah, we could block it and score and get 5 yards, but we weren't getting 70. And, for the first time in a long time, it looks like we have a couple of kids who can make explosive plays. Mm-hmm. And one of them is the South Warren transfer. Yeah. Davian Holloway. Yeah, I mean, it's, you have to have an inkling that the second leading rusher from arguably the best team in the state last year, South Warren, could play. Yeah,
maybe a little bit, huh?
Yeah, and Holloway he had 7 carries for 166 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, and he was the fastest guy on the field, and you could tell. Yeah, and Tyler Bush played extremely well, Tyler made some big plays last year, and he's a really good football player. And Tyler carried it 9 for 150 and 3 touchdowns, and had an 85-yard run. I think it may have been credit with a pass reception. We thought it was more of a toss behind the line of scrimmage, but anyway,
it was a swing pass right there on that line.
Right, and Gavin Withrow had a carry for 33 and a touchdown. He ran away from people. So and then we have on the outside we have some speed at the receiver spots that we haven't always had. So it looks like a team that's got an opportunity to put up points. And then I think that the player that most impressed me of all, obviously, Holloway and Bush had big games, but the player that impressed me the most was the quarterback, Jamison Bowie, sophomore, first start. And I thought going into the game, and I've heard some good things about him. What impressed me, he has no experience on the varsity level as a starting quarterback, but he had experience as a freshman baseball pitcher in varsity play.
And actually had a good year.
Had a very good year, threw a no-hitter, and so I thought the carryover could be poised. He was poised on the mound, and he looked at his poise as a quarterback was really good. They didn't ask him to do a lot. He only threw 7 times, but he threw a 53-yard strike to Jackson Coots, and it was, you can't throw it any better. And what was impressive, he got hit right basically in the chops, and he stood in there and took it and made a perfect throw. And that was, I think, our second score of the game. And I was really, really impressed with him.
One of the things that I came over there for a little while, and then I headed back over to the Glasgow-LaRue game, which we'll talk about Glasgow and LaRue here in the second segment, and Glasgow overall. One of the things that stood out to me about this was team speed that Barren has not traditionally had. As a matter of fact, you probably have to maybe go back to a time before I was actually even here when Daniel Bird was playing. That last time they had somebody on a football field with the kind of speed that Bush and Holloway have.
That's correct.
Because I don't remember anybody in the last 16 years. I remember a lot of people who were fast in track, but they weren't playing football at Barren. So some of the speedier kids in the school are out there.
Yeah, Kellen Smith had good speed, and Jeremy Zoltz, people like that. But yeah, you're talking about from to have more than one on the same team.
Yeah,
hadn't had that.
Yeah, and so that's impressive to have the speed. But I think the biggest thing is you talked about the offensive line. I can't, and this may have happened before, but I can't think of a time when Barren has returned 5 offensive linemen as starters.
Yeah, most of them are 3-year starters, too.
Yeah, I mean, now they've had some good offensive linemen, but they were never right together. I mean, it was like you'd have a sophomore and a senior. They've had some good offensive linemen, but just this pack is a different pack, and having the speed that behind him helps a lot.
That's correct. Actually, you don't have to block as good, to be perfectly honest with you. But what you can do is a 4-yard gain, it can turn into a 70-yard gain.
Oh, yeah.
And now listen, we're going to face teams down the road who are going to have more numbers than Metcalf. Metcalf had 29 dressed out, and going to have more team speed. Woodford County coming up this Friday will have more team speed.
Yeah.
North Hardin will have more team speed. Those type of Meade County will have speed. But we're going to be as fast, or not faster than several teams on the schedule, and that's rarely happens.
Yeah, and the schedule is favorable for the Trojans to be in good shape when their district starts. I mean, you talked about the Woodford game. That's at the, what is this called? The Trojan Trail Turf War at Barren County. They play at 8:00 against Woodford. Woodford is like one of those programs. You look at the geography and the growth of that particular county, and you figure at some point in time they're going to be a good football program, but they don't. That county does not have a history of good football, or at least top football.
Yeah.
But sandwiched there next to Lexington, in between Louisville, that kind of thing. So
they looks like to me they've turned the corner in terms of being serious about it. Mm-hmm. They hired a former football standout at UK. A first-team All-American in high school, Dennis Johnson is their coach. They lost Friday night to Lincoln County on the road, 21-14, and Lincoln has had a history of having good football teams.
Yeah.
So that tells me that
is French over there. Is he at Lincoln County still?
I don't know, but I know they have a good football program. Yeah. This will. I think we will be tested much more Friday night, to say the least. But,
yeah.
But you're right, and you were over there too Friday. It was a tremendous atmosphere, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've been to, I think, 2 regional finals that Metcalf County played in, and I don't remember a crowd that big for those games.
Yeah, I don't know what their gate was. The crowd had to be 3,000 or 4,000. You think?
At least. Yeah. I mean, there were 3,000 or 4,000 trying to get up the hill.
Yeah, it looked like it kind of looked like arena football. Is what I said on that air because everybody was lined up in lawn chairs right off the track all around the field. So it was kind of a neat. That was neat in one sense, but yeah, we got a great break with the weather too. Everybody did on Friday because it was brutal at the start of the week.
Oh yeah,
and by the end of the week, it was in the low 70s.
Yeah,
and we got a great break with that.
A little deeper down Barren County schedule, I mentioned that Woodford game, and then there's a game ahead of the Barren County Woodford County game on Friday night as well.
Yes, it's Monroe and Hart.
Yep,
and it starts at 6 o'clock.
Okay,
$5 to get you in for both games.
Really?
Yes.
Well, you can't beat that.
That's pretty good.
And then Barren they host Adair, they play at Monroe, they host Hancock, then they play at Greenwood.
If you just go by prediction and just go by what we've seen the first week, I think it's fair to say that Barren, we may be the favorite in every game we play in the first 5.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be a toss up with Monroe. Maybe we'll see, but we're not a huge underdog against any of those that group.
No, I would guess not. I tell you, one game, not to get too far ahead of myself here, but one game I'm now interested in is this Barren County at Greenwood game.
Well, of all the surprising scores Friday, the Greenwood defeating Franklin 28-14 was the one that got most people's attention.
Oh, yeah. And it also features a former Barren County head coach, William Howard,
right.
who's now at Greenwood.
Right.
And I always thought Howard was a very good football coach. I thought when he was at Barren, he was in the process of building a program.
Right.
He didn't stick around more than a couple of years.
Right.
But I think we saw the fruition of when he has some talent to go work with. He put together a pretty good game plan against Franklin Simpson Friday night.
He's a good guy too. Yeah, this is second year, and that was, Franklin lost a lot, but still, it's still surprising that Greenwood, who I think only won 3 or 4 games last year, went down there and knocked off the defending 4A state champions.
Oh, yeah.
On their field.
Right.
That's a little surprising.
Yeah, you say Franklin Simpson lost a lot. They lost Trey Bass and Carlos McKinney and a D1 offensive lineman.
They did. That's a lot. You're right.
It is a lot.
That's right.
But Franklin Simpson has gotten to where they've made us think that they are a reload, not a rebuild program.
I think the coach has the Franklin coach has impressed me in the last few years because he seems to have things in perspective.
Yeah.
They rarely panic. They lost 3 out of the first 4 a couple years ago.
Yeah.
We were talking off there, and he got that kind of righted pretty quick.
Yeah.
So I don't, and plus when you've won back-to-back state titles or been in the finals 3 out of 4 years, you 2 out of 3 years or whatever, you have a confidence in yourself too,
right,
that kind of permeates through the program.
Well, that game jumps out at me, and tangentially here, another game that kind of struck me on Friday night was the Allen County Elizabethtown game.
Yeah, that game wasn't close at any time, was it?
No, the score was 28-0 with 3:35 to go in the first half.
Yeah,
and then we were on the air doing the U.S. Army ESPN game night show, myself and Brian Webb, and I'm writing down some notes, and then I look up, it's 1:35 to go, and it's 42-0, and I was like, good grief. But Elizabethtown has, I think his name's Jay Beechler. He's like one of the fastest kids in the state, and Allen County just did not have anybody to keep up with him. Talking about speed and the difference it makes.
Right.
He just was way too fast for Allen County.
Well, yeah, it did surprise me because Allen has just, with Coach Hood, to be perfectly honest with you, they may not win every game, but they are always, seems like to me, very competitive.
Yeah.
And against good teams too. They really compete and so forth. So I was a little surprised about. Not that they didn't score, because Allen struggled last year offensively. Since they lost that good quarterback 2 years ago, they struggled last year. And even though they had good receivers, they struggled to score at times.
Right.
So I don't know if they've got that problem fixed, but they've always been pretty solid defensively.
Yeah.
And they were never in it, and that's surprising. And the tough news for Allen is their schedule doesn't get easier either. No. They've got a very difficult schedule.
Yeah, they do. So those are a couple of results from the Friday night that were interesting to me beyond just the Barren solid win against Metcalfe County. I look forward to this game with Woodford County because it does raise expectations getting a win like that, even if it is a smaller school, and we know that Metcalfe.
Well, that smaller school beat us 3 years ago.
Yeah, they've traditionally given Barren everything they want in that first game whenever they've played each other.
That's correct.
So that it's an impressive win nonetheless, and makes me look forward to this Woodford County game.
And I do think Metcalfe will be okay.
I do too. Look,
I do. I like their quarterback, their running back. They will get better. They ran the ball pretty darn good the first half. Yeah, Metcalfe. I kept Metcalfe stats. They had like 17 first downs.
Yeah,
and the running back had had 100 yards. They still put up about 280 yards. So, they will be fine, and their schedule becomes very, very manageable.
Yeah.
And I think Metcalf will be okay. I don't think they'd be discouraged. They've got to be happy with the gate, if anything.
Really.
That was a tremendous gate. I guarantee you they won't have a gate like that the rest of the year. And that's, again, the reason why teams around here should kind of play each other.
Yeah.
It's just financially, it's just, what a boon.
I've always said if you have good programs, you get more attention to them.
Yeah.
And the better the programs are, when they play each other, the better the response, the better the community is interested in those outcomes. So I think a better Barren County program, a better Metcalf, Monroe, Glasgow, Allen, if they're all playing each other, there's a lot more interested in the outcomes.
I agree.
Les Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back to talk a little bit about the Scotty Bowl.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag on ESPN Radio 1230.
Well, John, the Glasgow Scotties opened the season with a win in the Scotty Bowl. They beat LaRue County 35-13. LaRue County is like one of those programs, in a way, sort of like you were mentioning with Franklin Simpson. You may just wipe that first game off the map because by the end of the season they may be in the regional finals.
Yeah, they had 5 losses going in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, and then they got all the way to the state semifinals last year. And
it's a tradition-rich. From Greene County, LaRue County has always been extremely good in football.
Yeah,
back in the 80s, 90s, and
and they are a program. They lost a lot, sort of like Franklin Simpson. I mean, they had Anthony Atkins, who was a running back last year.
Right.
I think they had a lineman who went to Louisville. Or did he? No, he was going somewhere else.
It was Atkins that was committed, and with the new coach came in, they took away that offer to him and that kid from Franklin. Those were the two.
I think he ended up going to the Navy or the Army or something, where he ended up going to play football. But they had 2 or 3 other kids who were like really good football players on that team last year, and they were seniors, so it's expected to be a bit of a down year. But like, as you said, I mean, it's a tradition-rich program. They're always good. And in the first half Friday night, it was quite a game. Glasgow eventually muscled their way to victory is basically what it amounted to. I mean, they didn't do anything fancy or electrifying per se. They ended up giving Nick Mitchell the ball, and he ended up putting up the yards.
Well, that's similar to last year.
Yeah, we've heard this before.
That's right. I mean, what do you have? I think 160-some yards and 4 touchdowns, right? Yeah, that's about an average game for him, to be honest with you.
So now they still didn't. I think Tanner Abernathy was 9 of 19 or 8 of 19, something like that, for 94 yards. Passing game was still a little bit off kilter. Plus, they had quite a few negative rush yards that were a result of, I think, fumbled shotgun snaps and stuff of that nature.
Yeah, well, that's tends to happen often, sometimes early.
Yeah,
penalties and miscues and those things, that tends to happen more often than later. That was one of the impressive things of the Barren Metcalf County game. There was very few turnovers and very few penalties.
Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, it looked like a first game of the season.
Yeah,
and it kind of leaves the question. I mean, Glasgow lost some key offensive linemen. They've moved some people around. Chase Jones is on the offensive line. A couple of other guys that had played defense pretty much exclusively are on the offense now. And I think maybe that had something to do with the early season parts of this, some of the miscues and that kind of thing, guys getting used to. I mean, I know you've got 2 months, you got a month and a half of practice to get ready for the game, but it doesn't matter. I mean, until you play the game.
Sure. Some of it's nerves, too, I'm sure. Yeah, excitement.
But eventually, they took control of that game and ran the ball effectively. Now, the thing that I thought would be coming back for the Scotties this year, that would be good, would be their defensive front, and it was real good because LaRue County runs a wing tee, and that is a hard thing.
Yeah, you don't see that very often.
No, and you can get yourself out of position easily, and people run right by you.
Yeah.
So they were disciplined. They stay at home. Man, they swarm tackled. They were aggressive on defense.
Got pretty good team speed on defense.
They do, and so that part was impressive for the Scotties. I think their defense is going to be impressive all year long. I think actually, to me, that's going to be the key to their success this year, is that defense. but they also have a schedule that is going to get it tested quite a bit too.
Well, it's kind of hit or miss. I mean, I'm looking at it right now, and their first 5 games are with Russellville, and Russellville got destroyed by Warren East.
Yeah.
That's coming up.
That's not a test.
Monroe, they got shut out by Clay County, Tennessee, 34-0.
Yeah.
Allen County,
I guess we'll see.
We'll see. And then Hart County. That's the first 5 before they run into South Warren. So
maybe I should retract that statement.
Well, I mean, South Warren and Franklin jump out, and I think Taylor County's good. But other than that, I'm not. We'll just have to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
We'll see. They're going to have a good record. I can tell you that.
This is. You mentioned Warren East. That's a team that's been on their schedule in recent years. This might be a good year to have Warren East on their schedule again.
They're not.
They're not.
Yep.
Because Warren East looks like they have a pretty good team this year.
They do. They do.
Now, as you mentioned, is Russellville, which has been down the last few years.
Yes.
But Russellville kind of falls into that category of even when they're down, usually they have talent.
They do, but they got hammered.
Yeah, they did.
And one thing they're not going to have is a lot of size, and Glasgow's got a pretty good combination.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll have any trouble with them this Friday at Russellville.
No, I don't either.
What was the crowd like?
It was a good crowd. We did the pregame show there, started at 5, which is exactly the same time that the Allen County E-Town game kicked off.
Right.
And the crowd was solid. A lot of good Allen County attendees. Not as many from E-Town, as far as I could tell.
LaRue will travel well.
LaRue was good. There was a good crowd for the Glasgow-LaRue County game. There was a good crowd out there.
Got a great break with the weather.
They did indeed.
There's no delays. They could play at 5. Plus, the first game was a running clock.
Yes.
I mean, you can't ask for anything better.
No, they. I'm sure Craig Cassidy was like, "Thank you for this night."
That's exactly right. You cannot ask for a 5 o'clock start, and that game got over in an hour and a half.
Yeah, it was done.
Perfect.
But back to Glasgow real quick. I think that their schedule is pretty soft there in the beginning. And it's
not their fault. I mean, I think LaRue will end up being a good team, though.
Well, so a lot of people were worried they might lose that game.
Yeah, I think that's a good win for them.
Yeah.
I'm just saying these next couple coming up, I don't know. Monroe, it's hard to tell. They played a team outside of Tennessee.
Yeah.
So outside of Kentucky. So I don't know. Monroe, they won't back down from them. That's at Monroe. I don't think they'll get challenged this week against Russellville, though.
No, I don't either. And to that Monroe-Clay County game, somebody was asking me about Clay County, Tennessee, and from what I have read through the years or paid attention to through the years from Clay County, Tennessee, they are a program that like every 4 years they have a team. Because it's just
like the Olympics.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they're sort of like a Butler County kind of situation where you'll have these wave of kids that come through, and maybe they're on that wave right now. So, and it's hard to know how good or bad Monroe is because they have to avoid injuries, as Billy Joe talked about. I mean, that killed them last year, especially at quarterback.
Right.
If Curtis Pettit is playing and he's healthy, then I think they're not a bad team at all. If he's out, it's probably back to the drawing board in a lot of ways for what kind of offense they want to run. And we just don't. There's no way to measure effectively how good they are based on that first game. I think.
No, I agree.
And then Allen County, golly, I mean, E-Town may be that good this year.
Could be. They're well coached. That guy's won a lot of games.
Yes.
Well, the other team, we mentioned the surprise with Greenwood and Franklin. What about Warren Central? I mean, they still did not break their winning streak, but they got beat 64-54.
Yeah,
66-56. 66-56, and was up in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, they were up, I think, 56-50.
Against Apollo, right? I mean, that's no slouch.
No.
And evidently, he's got the basketball players out. And
that is key. Especially Dre Boyd playing quarterback.
That's correct. And evidently he's playing this crazy style. I don't know if that's fair. Different style. I don't think they're kicking any. I don't think they're punting or going for extra points. I think it's 4 down.
Or nothing.
That's exactly right.
He's got all his chips in the middle of the table. He's right. Like, I'm leaving Vegas with my clothes on or my clothes off.
It's going to be fun, and they're going to win games. That losing streak will end sometime because they're 66-56 to Apollo and Apollo is normally a pretty decent team, so that will eventually sometime was going to end.
That makes them. They play Greenwood on Friday night in that Warren County Bowl.
Wouldn't shock me to see them beat Greenwood.
That's going to be a fascinating game.
Yes, it would.
That'll be fascinating. And then after that, they play Bowling Green. That will not be so fascinating.
No.
Then they play South Warren.
Yeah, I mean their schedule's tough, but there's some winnable games on that schedule.
And then they open their district play on September 20th against Allen County.
Okay.
That's what I saw talking about the Dragons, who they have out playing. I mean, I saw Dre Boyd was going to be their quarterback. He's the guy who plays center.
Basketball.
He's listed as a guard, but really,
right.
In high school, he's kind of a center. But and then they had a couple of other kids that I remember from the basketball roster. One out playing wide receiver, and I was like, this guy's name's Kerry Fowler. It's his first year. He must have gone to Unseld, the boys basketball coach, and said, can I please have some of these dudes? I promise I will not get them hurt. Not that you can make such a promise,
right.
But I'm guessing he said, I'm not going to put them in a position to get them hurt.
Well, that's the first step. You have to have the horses.
It's kind of like we've talked about with Warren East's girls basketball program.
Right.
Getting the softball players out there to play basketball has helped their program out.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, no matter what size your school is, if you need to get your best athletes in as many sports as possible.
And in football is the one sport, and I'm sure some of the football coaches will cringe, but it's the one sport that doesn't take a ton of experience.
Yeah.
You just need players to come out, and some football coaches will admit this, that you can take a kid who's fairly athletic, who's never played, and you can put them on a football field and they can be effective.
Yeah.
You can't do the opposite. You can't take somebody who's never played basketball and just throw them out there.
Yeah.
Because it's just a different skill game. But football players, that's why I'm not. I actually talked to a former player of mine who has a son that's going to play. Just now coming out in his 8th grade year, and she said, "Well, he's never played before." I said, "It don't matter."
Oh yeah,
they don't care about that. He probably didn't have any bad habits and things like that. Can he run? Check, yeah. If he can run, you can find a place to get him to tackle and things like that. Past experience is not a priority in football.
One of the things I would say, just generally speaking about football, and we've seen this in college programs, they have to be, I guess, willing to accept the contact and the pain that comes from that.
That's correct.
That's probably the biggest thing.
You're right. This works it works at every level. There are NFL tight ends who didn't play college football.
Oh yeah. Yep.
That became very successful in the NFL. We have a Western basketball player, Fant.
Yeah, George Fant.
Never played football, and he's an offensive lineman now in the NFL, third year.
Yeah. Yeah, and
I don't know any that do the opposite.
No, and that's the other thing about talking about Fant, especially playing offensive line. I mean, one of the key factors there is your ability to move your feet.
That's correct.
And not trip over yourself in trying to execute these plays.
And he had the body to put weight on to be an NFL caliber. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got good feet in basketball. I mean, Billy Joe Murphy, who was in here with us, he
good basketball player.
Yeah, he was a good basketball player, mostly because he had really good feet.
That's right.
And good hands. I mean, that's why he was able to play college football.
That's right.
The size and all is a key part of it.
Sure.
But in terms of those things that people don't generally think about, I think that's where it falls in.
That's right.
This is the Brown Sports Bag, brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back to talk about Andrew Luck.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag on ESPN Radio 1230.
Well, John, Andrew Luck, the former, yes, I said former, Indianapolis Colts quarterback, said he's done with football on Sunday. I guess it was technically speaking officially on Sunday because I was
Saturday night.
Yeah, I noticed it Sunday afternoon because there's this.
I watched the press conference. I was watching it Saturday night.
Is that right?
Yeah, did the press conference after the exhibition game.
And so this just is, what did we, 2 weeks until the start of the NFL season?
It's a week from Thursday.
A week from Thursday. So we're basically a week from the start of the NFL season. And he announces he's retiring, and I'm just like at first, I didn't know there was any issues with him. I thought he was all fine and everything, but apparently he's had some injuries that he doesn't feel like are healing properly. Calf,
and then ankle.
Yeah, and so he's just done. And a lot of people unloaded on him, fans and people like Doug Gottlieb, who I really can't stand Doug Gottlieb. I used to like Doug Gottlieb, but in recent years, I think he's become just a windbag. But, that's just me. I didn't like Doug Gottlieb as a player, so maybe I gave him a break for a little while. But anyway, he unloaded on him. I don't know if it was on air, but it was definitely on Twitter and drew some responses, and kind of called him a bum for just dropping out like this, which I thought was unfair.
Yeah, that's unfair.
But he wasn't the only one who had something to say.
Well, the news leaked Saturday night during the game, the exhibition game, and it was ESPN reported across the ESPN screen.
Yeah.
Adam, what's his name?
Schefter?
Yeah, he reported that Andrew Luck is officially retiring. And so by the end of the game, the people that were there, of course, now with your mobile phones, most everybody knew it.
Yeah, they're in the stands going, he's retired.
Well, and they booed him off the stand as he was walking off, which was just terrible, to be perfectly honest with you. He didn't deserve to be booed. But it's part of the fan part of it is that so many people now with football are tied to two things that's made the fan interest go up in a lot of ways, especially emotional. Fantasy football.
Yeah.
And I play it, but not. I mean, there's people who play it for thousands of dollars.
Oh yeah.
So fantasy football, and I'm sure people have drafted him, and that probably made some people mad.
Well, in a keeper league, he's probably been your rotating quarterback. Sports
betting.
Yeah.
People have bet a lot of people in Vegas had already bet the Colts to they got like 10 or 12 to 1 to win the Super Bowl, the division. Right. And that went from 12 to 1 now is like 50 to 1. So you have the sports betting and the fantasy football crowd who are mad.
Yeah.
And then probably the people that stuck around the third preseason game to the very end. I mean, those are your fanatics who are going to be there anyway.
Yeah, right.
So you got a lot of that, and calling him a bum and calling him names is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I watched the press conference. He's sincere. He's a very intelligent guy.
Right.
29 years old, and you could tell you could tell the decision was painful for him.
Yeah. Football, I mean, as we were talking off air, football has been his life.
That's correct. His dad was involved in the league, and he grew up in it, and he's a great quarterback.
Yeah.
But he's been hurt a lot. I mean, he missed an entire year with shoulder surgery. The year before that, people forgot, he basically had half his kidney lacerated. I mean, that's a serious injury, and now he's got some more injuries. And what he said, he just got tired of constantly being in rehab and that pain. He wants to live pain-free. And he's recently married, and I admire that. And he's a world traveler. He just doesn't stay in Indianapolis. He travels the world, and I think he just was tired of being tired.
Yeah.
And the other thing he has, and a lot of these pro football players have today, and athletes today, by the way, is he has options now.
Yeah.
Because he's got $40-50 million in the bank.
Right.
And in the past, football players didn't have those options.
Yeah.
And now they've made so much money, it gives them the option. The only thing that I would say is that it was not great timing for his team. And that's the only thing that I would say is a little, he could have done it in the summer, and they give him Colts a little bit more time and things like that. And it's a week and a half, and it kind of that's the only thing. He talked about how much he loved his teammates and things like that. But that would be the only thing that I would go. If I was an executive in Indianapolis, I would say, come on.
Well,
can we put you on injured reserve for 6 games where you can get well?
Yeah.
Rather than just kind of walking away. That's the only thing that I don't care what he does. I really like him. I think he's a really good human being. That'd be the only thing, it'd be like he kind of walked away at a pretty close time to the year.
It's sort of like being a high school coach that quits a week before the season starts.
Yeah, unless you got heart problems or health problems for the stress, that's right, that you can't get away with. It's a little. Now, do I think he's permanently retired? I don't in any way.
You don't think this is a Barry Sanders?
I do not think so. Not at 29 and I think
Sanders 30.
30.
Yeah.
But I just think that he'll go away for a year. He'll get completely healthy. He'll miss it. He'll miss that competition because there's just so much you can do at 20. I mean, there's just so much time you can spend with your wife. I mean, after a while, you got to do something, and maybe he can get
he can take up gardening.
Well, he's smart enough. He can do he can do color if he wants to do that. But I just think he's going to miss that competition, and he's probably got. Listen, Drew Brees is 40. Brady's 42. These quarterbacks are the position. Them and kickers can play a lot longer. I just think he'll miss it, and he says he loves football. He just hates the rehab. I would not be surprised next year he's playing. I can almost guarantee in 2 years.
Here, I'm gonna give you. This is basically a sidebar, but we'll start with this. Andrew Luck doesn't need football. He loves football.
That's right.
So when I was in the Army, I loved being in the field, but I hated being in the barracks.
Right.
All right. And so for him, the injury time is like the time that is in the barracks.
Right.
He likes being in the action. He loves the game itself. But if he's not able to get on the field, then he's not even really participating in the game. He's participating in all the parts of the game that he probably doesn't like.
That's correct.
I mean, who does like them, really?
That's correct.
And so I can see why he could look at this situation and say, I've spent so much time not actually doing what I love, just to have a few minutes to do what I love.
I agree.
Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's reached that point where he's had his fill of it, and there's something else he wants to do with his life.
I agree with that, but that's why after a year he's going to feel good. his body's going to feel great, and he's going to go, well, come on now, let's try this again.
He might do that. I mean, he could possibly.
Hey, I admire a guy that walks away from. I think he had $70 million left on his contract.
Yeah.
I mean, that's if you can walk away from $70 million, then that's why when people want to criticize him.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a heck of a state. He must be dead miserable and serious to do that. I just think the timing is a little strange and a little tough for his teammates. Just a little tough.
The timing is really bad,
right?
For his teammates and for the organization itself. But one of the things I thought about as I was looking at all the people who were criticizing him was that usually people criticize folks like Andrew Luck out of jealousy.
Yes.
I mean, they wish they could be them, and they don't understand why somebody would give up something like that.
Right.
But I mean, in a sort of another sidebar sort of way, some people are married to people, and they look and they say they've got a wonderful wife or husband. Why would they give that up?
Right.
But they do. People do that kind of stuff all the time in circumstances that look perfect from the outside. And Andrew Luck kind of laid it out why it's not perfect.
Yeah, until you walk in their shoes, you don't know.
You just don't know.
Yeah, and he's miserable.
Yeah.
And I can relate to that in a lot of ways. When it's no fun. It's no fun,
right?
And you're right. You said it correctly. He loves the play. He loves the game, but he said I've been hurt for the last 5 years, serious injuries, and he says it's kind of hard to get better at your game if all you're doing is rehabbing.
Yeah,
you're rehabbing the injury rather than improving your play.
Yeah, your skills, and so it'll be curious to see if he does come back in a year whether or not he is Barry Sanders or Brett Favre. In terms of walking away from the game. Because Barry Sanders...
Or Michael Jordan.
I mean, because Barry Sanders was, right there capable of being the greatest yardage-wise running back of all time.
Yep.
And he knew he was that close. And he walked away from the game at that point in time.
Healthy, too.
Yeah, I mean, he had no real injuries to speak of.
Well, Calvin Johnson.
Yep, exactly.
Retired early as a receiver.
Boy, the Lions. Now, if he played for the Lions, he would not be back.
That's right. But, Michael Jordan walked away from basketball for 2 years.
Yeah.
Tried baseball.
Yep. That turned out to be more miserable, I guess.
And came back, rejuvenated, ready to go. And I kind of see that with Luck. I can see him getting healthy. He's going to spend time and getting better and probably going across the world again because he spent a lot of times overseas.
Yeah.
And I think he'll miss it. and he's young enough, and he'll be healthy again. I just got a funny feeling he'll be back.
Here's one curious question, though. So, whenever a player retires, that once that clears the retirement, then that contract rolls off for that team, right? Well, I think so. Within a certain amount of time. I don't know when.
I don't know what the red tape is. I would assume that Indianapolis would keep his rights.
Yeah.
I don't know what the contract is going to be like, or I don't know that, but they would keep his rights as a player. He can't just come back and, I would think, go to wherever.
Yeah.
I don't think he would do that anyway.
No, I mean, but that is going to be a curiosity, and plus now they need to find a quarterback, and maybe there's one out there for him. I mean,
I think they're comfortable with the one they got.
Yeah, well,
Jacoby
Brissett.
Yeah. He played pretty well for him the year that Luck was out.
Yeah,
he's 4-11, which is not very good, but he came in like a week before their first game.
Yeah, well, their offensive line's basically been 4-11 for.
Well, they were. I think the other thing that makes it tough for Colts fans is they have a legitimate. They were considered one of the top 5 teams in the league.
Yeah,
they had. They won a game in the playoffs. They've drafted really well. Their offensive line is 100% better. They drafted 2 rookies last year. Did a good job. I mean, they've got a really good football team, and they had an elite quarterback, and now they don't have an elite quarterback. I do think the guy they got is good. I don't think he's Super Bowl good.
Yeah, real quick on quarterbacks that may be available. Maybe Teddy Bridgewater is one that they wind up getting.
He's not played well at all in preseason.
No, Taysom Hill has the number 3.
Yeah, I'm a Louisville guy, but he has not played well. I don't think he's as good as the guy that Indianapolis has right now.
Yeah, well, and he's in a bad comparison situation too in New Orleans when you're playing behind Drew Brees. But I do think Taysom Hill has played better, the number 3 guy on the Saints.
They have. I think he may have replaced him.
Yeah, I think so too. So Bridgewater may wind up on the market, and if nothing else, the Colts will need another quarterback.
They will,
if not a starter or backup.
I agree.
Well, this Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag on ESPN Radio 1230.
Well, John, we're back, and we're going to talk a little bit about college football because tis the season for college football locally.
Yes.
And nationally.
Yeah, had one Saturday, right?
Right, yep.
Ugly game.
Florida. Yeah.
Florida won an ugly one against Miami.
Yeah, I don't know. They are supposed to be rivals, but they've kind of skipped playing each other a little bit in recent years. So they both looked ginned up to be playing each other again, and forgot that they were supposed to be playing football.
Yes, about 3,000 penalties.
Yeah, but anyway, so Western Kentucky University, they actually get their season started Thursday
under the Coach Helton era.
Yes, under Coach Helton era. And they named their starting quarterback, and it is not the Arkansas transfer Ty Story. They went with Stephen Duncan, who played last year.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Although Helton,
everybody played last year at quarterback.
Yeah, they did, and not necessarily because of injuries, but because they couldn't find anybody who could throw the football, really. But Helton did say Story will be getting some snaps during the course of the game, and look, I'm not questioning Tyson Helton. I'm sure he knows what he's doing, but I always kind of hate that. I hate that we're going to rotate quarterbacks kind of thing.
That tells me it's really close. And he said that. I saw the interview with him. He basically said it's just basically the two have not separated from each other, and that's never that's not a good sign. And he said, it's just his gut. He had to go with his gut, and his gut tells him Stephen Duncan. But because there's not a lot of separation, he's also going to play Ty Story, and you can see why, because Story transferred in from Arkansas. He's got 1 year, and I'm sure that was. I'm sure he wouldn't promise the job, but I'm sure there was discussion. You got a great shot at it, coming in. So
and the quarterback play last year, those returning would open the door for anybody who wanted to transfer in. They could look at the stats from last year and say, I have a shot there.
Right, but I think the optimism this year for Western is legitimate. I mean, they've gone through 2 tough years and coming off the Jeff Brom from 2 years ago. It looks like Coach Helton has a similar offensive philosophy, and they are going to try to score.
Yeah,
and they're going to try to throw the ball a lot, and that's what the people want.
Yeah,
I know that's what keeps me interested in watching Western. I'd love watching them with Jeff Brom, and I think I'm going to really enjoy it with this team. Now, do they have the personnel? I don't think they had the big play personnel that they had with Brom. And they had a couple of really, they got NFL players, let's just be honest with you. And,
right. Taywan Taylor.
That's right. Mike White's fighting for the backup quarterback right now for
Cowboys.
For the Cowboys. So I don't think they have that personnel, but I do think I think they have a scheme that they're going to stick with, and they're going to recruit to that, which is really, really important.
Right.
And I think they're going to be exciting again. I don't think it's an understatement. They need to beat Central Arkansas.
Yeah. They don't need a main catastrophe.
No. If they have any chance of having a winning record, it has to start with beating Central Arkansas. And I think it's important they look good, too.
Yeah, that game's at 6:30. The kickoff is at 6:30. We're going to have the Topper tailgate before that, which will, I think, be from 4:30 to 5:30, and then there'll be the pregame show with Randy Lee, voice of the Toppers.
On this channel?
You know what? I'm not sure if we're going to have the Topper tailgate on this channel.
Okay.
The pregame and all will be on Sam 100.7.
Okay. All right.
So, and the game itself will
That's
be on
right.
Sam 100.7.
And some other Western football news I thought was interesting. They've announced that they're going to play Ohio State.
Yes.
In 2 years.
Yep.
And then Alabama the next year.
Yeah.
And they're going to get, what was it, $1.8 million to go play Ohio State?
Yeah, they're going to hit the jackpot, basically.
1.8 to play Ohio State. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's the thing about those games. I mean, you line them up and you say to yourself, well, we hope we have a good showing, but mostly it's about funding the program.
It really is.
And, whatever lumps come with that are worth it as long as you get the payday.
It is about the money, and I also think don't you think it's also good for recruiting? I mean, it'll be on some form of national TV, and don't you think most players want to play at Ohio State or at Alabama? I would. I think it'd be neat.
So here's the thing. So Western goes and they play at Ohio State. They're going to be Ohio State recruits there and their family and that kind of stuff. That's not to say that they're necessarily going to leave from being recruited by Ohio State to go to WKU. But you are opening the door in geographic areas for the people who come to those games to notice you.
And when you recruit at Western, part of the thing you're going to sell is we're going to play Alabama, we're playing Ohio State. Yeah, there's scouts are going to be there.
You'll be on TV.
You're going to be on TV, and I think most competitive people. A lot of those kids probably dreamed about playing Ohio State or playing for Alabama. And what's the next best thing? Well, let's play against them.
Yeah, and there have been a lot of programs that have made their hay, especially recruiting down south, the 3 stars.
Sure.
Especially programs at WKU's, that mid-level section. A lot of Conference USA schools have done well doing that kind of thing, and I would say a place like Columbus is probably a hotbed for high school football athletes as well.
There's no question about it, and there's with the Toppers playing back-to-back years at Alabama, Ohio State. I mean, those are 2 of the top 5 programs in college football.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, historically and right now.
Yeah. Also, speaking of Kentucky, by the way, they start against Toledo on Saturday, the 31st, played 11 a.m.
According to the Big Blue following, this will not be an easy game.
Yeah.
They're genuinely concerned. Toledo is one of the better MAC teams.
Yep. And it'll be interesting to see what their running game looks like now that Benny Snell's gone. And
I think what's interesting to see is have the quarterback got any better.
Yeah, Wilson, he's got a good arm. He runs pretty well, but he did not throw the out passes very well. He didn't throw the slant routes very well. He could throw a bomb.
Yes.
But he's got to be a lot better.
He does, and I think that's going to be a big deal. And Louisville opens up next Monday.
Yep. At
home, national TV against Notre Dame. Ouch. They don't have the horses. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah. Now, I'm looking forward to how this pans out because I really, as we talked about before, Satterfield did a great job recruiting at Appalachian State.
Yep.
Moved them from a D2, D1, D1 program. They were competitive.
Yep.
So he knows how to get players. If he could do it in in the mountains, then I'm sure he can do it in Louisville. So I look forward to that. But yeah, they have a lot of rebuilding to do before they can take that hill.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. Liz Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week at 4 o'clock or so.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
This is WCDS Glasgow, ESPN Radio 1230, your total sports leader.